And then I just like to say it again when we're started that we're recording this for educational and promotional purposes. And yeah, great. I like to welcome you to our Empathy Circle Facilitator Training Introduction. I'm Edwin Rutch. I'm the director of the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy. And I've been working for about 14 years on, how to build a more empathic society. I started the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy, and our center has all kinds of different empathy building projects. We have trainings. We have something called the Empathy Tent, which we take out to public places, offer listening and empathy circle practice and conflict mediation out in public. That was more before COVID. We're not doing that so much now. We also have a large social media, presence, Facebook, LinkedIn, so forth. I think we have about 30,000 likes on our Facebook page. And we've been focusing on these Empathy Circle Facilitator trainings. It's our project now to teach you how to become a facilitator of the process. And from my about years of working with empathy, I found that the Empathy Circle is sort of the easiest first step gateway practice for learning and kind of deepening your empathy skills. It's a lot like a muscle. We all have the empathy muscle, just like we all have muscles. And they can be strengthened or they can get weakened. And so this is the Empathy Circle practice I find is sort of the best sort of first step gateway practice for sort of strengthening those empathy muscles. I'm going to just do a screen share here to show you the outline of what we're doing today. And this is just our outline. This is the welcome, which you're getting now. We're going to go around and hear from each of the participants, just a little bit about you. I'm going to talk about the training, review the outline of the training, how to get sign up for it, kind of what's involved. There'll be a little time for questions and answers. And then we'll go into how to take part in an empathy circle, and we'll actually take part in an empathy circle and then have about a 10-minute debrief at the end. And all this takes about 2 hours. And as I mentioned, this is being recorded for anyone that's just joining us. This is a reminder. So maybe we'll start with participant introductions, a little bit about yourself. Would somebody like to lead that? One of our facilitators, maybe Sita, or we're just going around, and let me put in, you have about 30 seconds to share your name, your location, why you're interested in taking the training. Do you want to call on people, Sita?
Sure, yeah, I'll do that. It's nice to see everybody's faces, and I'll just go in line of the people that I see on my screen. So Kat, do you want to start?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Kat Spence and I'm based in Aberdeen in Northeast Scotland. And I've just finished with cohort 10, so I'm just getting started with doing the training. And I've enjoyed it so far. It's just been a couple of months, but I've already been seeing it sort of making a lot of positive improvements to my communication and relationships and other things that come off of that. So it's really good.
That's great. Thank you, Kat. Bill?
Yeah, my name is Bill Filler. I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area. I've been working with Edwin on streets and then also on Zoom for about 3 years. I'm one of the trainers in the, who co-created the training, the facilitation training. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Bill. Graham?
Hi, everybody. As you can see from my little logo thing there, I'm from Ontario in Canada. And I'm very interested in the Empathy Circle because I want to build my confidence in communication and indeed leading such groups. And so that's why I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. Paige?
Hi, everyone. I'm in St. Albans in England. I came to this through Extinction Rebellion pathways, and just getting interested in different forms of facilitation. This is the first time I've come to an empathy circle, and I studied conflict, but in terms of like more international conflict. So I'm really interested in going to this personal, interpersonal level as well.
Great, thank you, Paige. Welcome. Michelle?
Hi, I'm Michelle. I'm based here in Galway in Ireland, and I've taken a number of the trainings with the movement, and yeah, I'm like building skills as a trainee, and I'm just experiencing like just a huge amount of personal growth from it, and really grateful for the journey.
Great, thank you. Veronica?
Oh, hello. This is the first time that I've been to this Empathy Circle, and I'm absolutely delighted to join you. I'm in England, and I work with parents, children at a very mixed community school. And so obviously this is essential to my work and my own belief and focus. So thank you very much for hosting this.
Great, thank you, Veronica. Welcome. Rachel?
Folks, my name is Rachel. I'm here in Hudson, New York. This is my second time here. It's part of a training for pandemic professors, which is a tutoring program. And I'm getting my master's in social work right now. And so this is really great opportunity for me to learn to listen. Yeah, so I'm happy to be here.
Wonderful, thank you, Rachel. And then here's somebody, I see a few people, I can't see their names. So let's see. Oh, here we go. Maria, am I saying that right?
It's Maria.
Maria, okay.
Hi, I'm in Kailua, Hawaii, and I've done some things with the NVC, and I do personal coaching and dog training. And so the communication piece is something I've always been interested in. And this is my first empathy circle.
Great, thank you. Welcome, Maria. Dominic.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I missed the mute button. I am in the San Francisco Bay Area area. And my background, similar to Rachel's, I'm a part of pandemic professors, and I also am hoping to become a psychologist later in my career. So this seems like a natural next step.
Great, thank you, Dominic. Jennifer.
Hey everyone, my name is Jennifer. I'm from the Staten Island area of New York, and I'm here for today for pandemic professors as well. And I feel like this would be an opportunity because I'm studying human services in college. And yeah, thank you for hosting this.
Great, thank you, Jennifer. Lydia.
Hi everyone, I'm Lydia. I'm currently in the Ann Arbor area right now in Michigan, and I'm also doing pandemic professors, and later I'm going into pre-law, so I'm really excited for an opportunity like this to shape how I go about that. So I'm excited to be here.
Great, Lydia, thank you. Nashin, am I saying that correct?
Yeah, hi.
Okay.
So like a few of the people here, I learned about this program through pandemic professors, and it's my first empathy circle. I am a freshman in New York City, and I am excited to be here.
Great, welcome Nashin, thank you. Adelina.
Hi, I'm Adelina. I'm based in Bucharest, Romania, and this is my third empathy circle. I'm working in an organization, and I want to learn how to be more empathic with my team, and also how to use empathy circles in my private practice.
Great, thank you, Adelina. Diana.
Hi, I'm Diana. I'm in the Bay Area, and I'm feeling my muscle for this.
Diana, I'm sorry to say that your sound blanked out just for a moment, so we didn't hear everything that you said. Something about your muscle.
my muscle for listening or what, communication.
So I think you're saying that you're growing your muscle. We didn't hear the first part of that.
Yes.
Yes.
I need to regrow it.
Great. Well, welcome. Thank you. And Howie.
Yeah. Hello. So
Hi.
my name is Oyi, and I'm a 18-year-old climate activist from Extinction Rebellion, China, and currently I'm in Berlin, and I will stay in Europe for next half a year to learn the movement here. And I have been coordinating the Fridays for Future China for 1.5 years, and so I'm very happy to meet you all here.
Great. Thank you, Howie, and welcome. All right. And I think that's everybody. Please let me know if I've missed someone. I'm Sita, and I'm from Portland, Oregon. And I took a training, I think about a month ago now. And so I've just been coming to these practices here and wanting to learn about and grow my empathy skills. So thank you.
Thanks,
Great.
Sita. So what we're going to do next is just review the website. I'm going to put the link in, and you don't have to go there because I'm going to share it, but that's a gateway website for our training. So we'll review this, the website, and then we'll go into the some Q&A. So here we are with, this is our website. It's just right now, it's a Google Doc. We'll have a new URL, the empathycourse.com, but it's not set up quite yet. So this is our previous cohort, and this is, you just start off, this is an introductory training to facilitate empathy circles. And it's a good website to bookmark, like if you want to take the training, you can bookmark this and have it as a reference. There's no cost to take part because the trainers we're all really wanting to build a more empathic culture in society. So everyone donates their time, but you can also donate. We have a fundraiser on Facebook as well as PayPal. So you can donate there if you'd like. If you scroll down, you'll see the start page. If you click on that, it'll take you to our Facebook page, and this has lists of all the introductory cafes, which this is part of, and you can click on the discussion area down here. And if everybody could mute, please, there's a little bit of background noise. So there's discussion area for kind of updates, and you can see upcoming introduction cafes. This video here is with some of our trainers. We're here at UC Berkeley here in California, and we have this empathy tent, which I mentioned. We took it to the campus, and then we were doing empathy circle training here out on the lawn of the main plaza. That's our empathy tent, and we set that up and offer listening, as I mentioned, and empathy circle practice. So we've been doing this for quite some time. And again, yeah, you can just kind of scroll down, look around that. Then we'll take you back here. To take the training, we have a prerequisite that you take part in 2 empathy circles. And this taking part in this empathy circle here today counts as one of them. And you can click on the link here. There's a list of upcoming empathy circles that you can take part in, or you can just hold your own. The instructions are there, just how to hold it. And you can just invite some family, friends, or whoever and get together and hold some empathy circles yourself. We want you just to have some experience with the process before you take the training. The time commitment, if you click through there, you'll see it's the training is 5 weeks for 2.5 hours a week. There's also, let's see, we also have you do an empathy buddy call. So you'll be matched up with someone different between each session. And you have a 30-minute empathy buddy call. You do mutual empathic listening with each other. So that kind of adds another 30 minutes. And then we ask that you try to do an empathy circle between the sessions. So that can be another hour or 2 there. But if you can't, that's okay. If you can't make it, if it's not like a requirement, but just that you try, and then you can report back your experience. These are the signups, the current cohorts. We have a cohort 9, which is in process right now. We have cohort 11, which is forming. You can see it starts March 4th or 5th, depending on where you are in the world. And this is more geared towards the California, Australia to India time zones. So if you're, in that time zone, it'll be a more convenient time of the day for you. And it'll be on Thursdays for 5 weeks. We are forming new cohorts. I've been just talking with some of the XR people who have taken the training through XR, and we're looking at maybe Mondays, holding a cohort that would be just for Extinction Rebellion, kind of optimized for Extinction Rebellion. I talked with Alyssa, who is one of the co-founders of Pandemic Professors, and on, I think it's Saturday, March 13th, we're going to be starting a cohort for Pandemic Professors. So it'll be a 5-week cohort, and I'll put a link into that too if you're interested in taking that. So if you scroll down a bit, you can see the application. You click through, and there's a Google form application that you need to fill out for the to take part. And if you click through to the other link to sign up, you'll see there's sort of the steps for signing up are here. These are the orientation cafes. This is for the cohort 11. The times, you'll see the times, you'll see the people who have signed up. I think we have like 5 or 6 spaces left open. And we do have a large wait list, actually. These are people mainly who are trying to get their second, first or second empathy circles to meet the requirement. Then we add them to the list. So that, and then if you scroll down the page some more, you'll see the modules, each module, kind of the basic outline of what we do. There's a lot of practice in the training, so it's not real didactic. Like right now, I'm, kind of doing a lot of explanation, but in the training, you'll get a lot of practice. It's very participatory, so you actually be facilitating empathy circles. There's kind of links to the different sections. We talk about our vision is really to create a culture of empathy. So we're really trying to, it's really about cultural change to raise the level of empathy in society, because we feel if we can just have more empathy in our global culture, it's just going to lead to more well-being for all of humanity. So that's really the sort of the core why of why we're doing this. And you can, scroll down, you can see the Empathy Circle website, Culture of Empathy. On the website, there's well over 300 interviews with empathy experts, our Empathy Tent project. So just all kinds of reference material. And these are the different cohorts, just the different parts of the training, and you can go check out the different parts. And I did forget to mention the training path. So we're starting with our cohorts. We used to hold cohorts at different times, but now we're starting to hold this cohort series. So for example, cohort 9 will always be, we'll have 5-week cohort, and then the next 5 weeks and the next 5 weeks. So it'll be a continuous cohort series, and once you've done the cohort once, you can take it again as a participant, or you can take it a 3rd time. And then you can also, if you want to become a trainer of the process, you can become a trainee. So you can be a trainee for, a couple of cohorts, several cohorts, and you can become a trainer of it. And you can also learn how to produce these trainings. So we're really trying to kind of scale up this training. So you're not just signing up necessarily for just one cohort. You can just sign up for a whole series and kind of become a trainer of the process, and then maybe even hold your own trainings in your own community. And we hope with Pandemic Professors to get a bunch of the pandemic professors to learn the process and sort of bring it in-house there too. So that's kind of just a quick sort of intro to the process. is it maybe just open it up to any questions? Just maybe raise your hand if you have a question or comment, or if you have anything to add, Bill, as a trainer.
No, just welcome. And I just, some of you, you're coming from all over the world. If English is not your first language, please, any accommodations that we do, we're more than happy to do. It's not a, it's not a difficulty for us. We appreciate the courage and the fortitude you have to come do this in a language that's not your native language. And so we want to make it as easy as possible for you. That's it. Thanks.
Okay, any questions?
I wanted to ask if there is going to be another cohort with for the European time zone.
We do have the cohort 9, which is
but it's full.
It's full, but the next one will be starting. If you check the link now,
okay,
right after we have 4 more sessions, and then after that there'll be the next cohort. So y'all can already sign up for the next cohort, and we'll also be setting up more cohorts. Yeah, so I'm really excited about this new ongoing because you'll know when the next ones are coming up. We'll be adding more cohorts, so I think it's really going to help us expand for setting up more cohorts. And then you can also keep just following the Facebook event page because we'll always be posting the new cohorts. And we're starting to set up an email list, and you can give us your email. And since you had signed up before, you're on the wait list, I have your email. We'll add you to the email list, and then you'll also get announcements there.
Yeah, I'm already on the waiting list. So
yeah, cool.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the question. Okay. So then, I'm not seeing any more questions. So next we'll go into how to do the empathy circle process, and I'm going to show a little 6-minute video, and let me bring that up. This will explain how to do it. Okay, is everyone seeing that? Okay, here we go. For the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy, I'd like to welcome you to this short presentation on how to take part in a basic empathy circle. So next, let's look at the step-by-step how to take part. An empathy start. Just want to check, was everyone hearing that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, oh great. Circle starts with 2 to 7 participants. Here on the screen, we have 4 participants, which I find is an ideal number. There are 4 basic roles, and the roles rotate among the participants as the empathy circle unfolds. 1, the speaker, is the first person to speak. 2 is active listener who actively listens to the speaker. There's the silent listeners, they quietly observe and witness. And the facilitator who organizes, schedules, and hosts the circle. They also do the timekeeping, and they have some experience with the process and help keep participants in the process. However, everyone has the responsibility to hold the process and the practice. So to begin with, the facilitator will start the empathy circle. They welcome the participants. They lead introductions if the participants don't know each other. The facilitator invites participants to give short introductions, for example, their name, where they're from, and something personal about themselves. The facilitator then reviews the empathy circle process to remind everyone how it works. They announce the discussion topic, if there is one. Even if there is a topic, you can always talk about what is alive for you. That is what is on your mind in the moment. And 5, they set the speaker time limits, perhaps 5 minutes, for example. And the facilitator then asks who would like to start to to be the first speaker. So at that point, the participant volunteers to be the first speaker. As speaker, you select who will be your active listener, and you can select anyone that you want. You speak about the topic given or whatever is alive for you, and so you'll speak a bit until you have maybe expressed an idea or two, and then you want to pause to give the active listener a chance to recap what they understand that you are saying and feeling. If you say too much, the listener may have difficulty in reflecting it. As the active listener, you are listening to the speaker to get an understanding of what they're saying and what is important to them. You are giving them your full attention as a supportive companion on their inner journey and exploration. When the speaker pauses, you recap your understanding of what they said and how they feel by reflecting the essence of that in your own words. You can summarize, paraphrase, or even say the speaker's words back to them. Even though you may have a strong impulse to respond with your own ideas, judgments, analysis, advice, and sympathy, or even questions, resist the impulse to do so. Because these common responses block the speaker from moving along their internal journey. You'll be able to say whatever you want when it is your turn to be the speaker. If you don't reflect the understanding to the speaker's satisfaction, they can always say it again. Then as speaker, you check, do you feel understood to your satisfaction? If you do not feel understood, you can say it again, perhaps in different words. If you do feel understood, continue sharing. Again, after speaking a bit, pause to give your active listener a chance to recap their understanding of what you said. As the active listener, you again share your understanding of what the speaker said and meant. The cycle of speaking and reflecting continues until you, as the speaker, do not have anything else you'd like to say, or until you get a signal from the timekeeper. If you get a signal from the timekeeper, then finish up what you're saying in a sentence or two. After you get a final reflection, you can end your turn by saying something like, "I feel fully heard," or something like that to indicate you are done with your speaking turn. At that point, the roles then rotate. The active listener becomes the speaker. The person they select becomes the new active listener. For everyone having equal time, it is good to select someone that hasn't spoken lately, but it is your choice. The others in the circle become the silent listeners. This process of taking turns in speaking and active listening continues for whatever time is allotted for the empathy circle. And this was just a very short introduction. The best way to learn the practice is taking part and doing it. There is more in-depth material on taking part in an empathy circle and facilitating one at empathycircle.com. Thank you for listening. All right, so that's sort of a basic introduction. We have 4 circles, or no, 1, 2, how many do you have? I guess, yeah, we're doing 4 circles. I'll be in a room with Graham. We'll stay here. Graham, you'll facilitate the circle. Then there'll be Bill and Sita, and then one with Kat and Michelle co-facilitating, since we have an extra facilitator. So I think we're ready to go. And we're good to have a topic. So let me put the topic in there. We'll have, you can decide 4 or 5-minute turns, and for the facilitators can decide. So the question is, why are you interested in taking the Empathy Circle Facilitator Training, or whatever is alive for you? As we said in the explanation, you can always talk about whatever is, you have energy around or that's on your mind. And we'll go for an hour and 15 minutes, and we'll come back and have a little debrief. So with that, opening all the rooms, and see you in the Empathy Circle.
I'm sorry, how do I choose which room to go to?
Well, I'm the facilitator, Nushin. In this instance, you are in the main room.
Oh, okay.
That I had exactly the same question. I was looking for a button to press.
Oh, right. Yeah. So we keep one in the main room because sometimes people drop out. And then if we stay in the main room, we're able to, if they lose their connection, they try to come back in. So yeah. Okay. So this is the four of us Graham's facilitating.
Thank you for clarifying.
Pleasure. Just very briefly, Nushin, will you remind us where you come from?
It's Noshin.
Noshin.
So,
Okay, Noshin.
And I'm from New York City.
New York City. Oh, lovely. Okay, so you're fluent in English or familiar with English then?
Yes.
Good. And hello, Paige. Whereabouts are you from, Paige?
I'm in England.
Right. Okay. So English is also your mother language.
Yeah.
And I'm from Ontario, and English is my mother language as well.
I'm from California, and I struggle with English.
Okay. So very briefly, can I restate our roles in this empathy circle? We're all responsible for our contribution to the group, and so we all need to listen and, like Edwin said earlier, bear witness to what other people are saying. But then we broadly have four roles. We have the speaker, and we'll start off with somebody being the speaker, and then you have the active listener, and the speaker chooses the active listener and asks permission if that person would actually be the speaker, or at least be the listener. And the speaker then speaks about whatever is important to them, or follows the topic in this case, but speaks in terms of a couple of ideas, one or two, maximum three, but just a couple of ideas so that the listener can actually cope with what has been said and be able to reflect it. And after speaking and reflecting, this goes on for a while, then your time will be called, and that will be called by me, the facilitator, in this case after 5 minutes, and I'll say time. I'll attract your attention and let you know. And so you finish the thread that you're on and you get reflection from your listener. And then the speaker will transfer it to the active listener, and the active listener becomes the speaker. So going back to the active listener, this is actually quite a challenging task in our culture. And here we need to be able to listen and reflect, and ideally just give the gist of what is said, like speaking roughly half the time that the speaker speaks. And we need to avoid questions and things like that. And in the group that I'm running, if you actually want to seek some clarification, or you want to step outside of your role for a minute, just do this, and we'll halt the proceedings and you can ask your question. But the idea is that you reflect, and then eventually it'll become your turn. And when you become the speaker, you then select a listener, ask them if they would like to be your listener, and so the process continues. And for me, as the facilitator, I'll record your time, and like I said, I'll draw your attention to this. And I'm also trying to keep things very minimal. And if you talk too long, it's going to be a strain on your listener. So I'll ask you to remember to pause. And yeah, it's a very simple process. I think you get the idea of it shortly. Anyway, would one of you like to be the speaker? Paige, would you like to be the speaker?
Yeah, that's fine.
And you can select anybody as your listener. And that includes me as the facilitator. So I'm an active participant, also being the facilitator. And so remember, your topic is to either answer the question, why are you interested in taking the Empathy Circle Facilitator Training? Or you talk about whatever is uppermost in your mind.
Okay. Edwin, would you be happy to be my...
Yep, listening.
Okay, so do I just start? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So why I was interested in taking the Empathy Circle Facilitator Training. So I feel a lot. I feel very strongly emotionally myself, and I feel able to be empathetic with other people, and I'm interested in having a framework through which to channel this, to work with groups or communities or organizations, whatever it might be. So part of it is, yeah, I'm interested in the structure and the framework of this method or this process.
Yeah, so I hear that you feel strongly and that you're looking for a method and a process for holding dialogues. And so you're kind of interested in the structure of it. And I think you're saying that you're a good listener too, or you listen.
I feel, I feel like I can do that quite well naturally, be a good listener. But I also really happy to have the techniques for it, because helped me to be a lot more aware just through having names for things or some structure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you feel you're a good listener, but it would be helpful to also have a structure and some vocabulary names for different parts of maybe listening. And
mm-hmm. Yeah. Another part of it is, like I mentioned in the check-in, I've been studying violence, conflict, and development as my master's that I finished just in the autumn. And I am very interested in these topics, but I, on some level, feel disconnected from the way that we look at them. It feels like there's a big hole there. So I feel like this will be, a part of bringing in another form of working with conflict and peace that really is on a different level, that is is also self-work. And I feel it's really important to bring those together for me.
Okay, so you've been working on a master's on, I didn't quite get it, conflict, addressing conflict. And it sounds like you're having some questions about how it's sort of approached, and maybe you're looking for other ways of approaching it, the topic.
Yeah, the master's is violence, conflict, and development.
Oh, violence, conflict, and development, master's.
Yeah. And another way that this has sort of come into my life is through yoga. So I've been training as a yoga teacher. So it all feels interlinked for me. That's feels like a process of working with our emotions, welcoming it all in and going through them. That's an embodied practice. And I'm also interested in these frameworks as other tools, because I think, there are different ways to different people, and this feels like a good community engagement process of what I can see from it, but this is my first time.
Yeah, this is your first time, and you're really, what I hear is you're looking for sort of more embodied engagement sort of processes, and you do yoga, which is sort of embodied. And from what you're seeing so far, that this might be more of a sort of embodied process.
I feel like the yoga is obviously an embodied process of going through emotions, and this might be another way of going through similar things, but that is perhaps more widely applicable to communities, or maybe just different groups of people might appeal to. And yeah, so it's sort of, part of it is the offering I can bring, as well as as well as what I get from it myself in going through empathetic processes and awareness.
Yeah, so there's the yoga is sort of is an embodied, sort of a process for working with emotions and feelings. You're looking for others, that you see that this might be a way too, and something that's maybe more accessible to a wider variety of people. I think that's sort of the essence.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I've heard.
All right, thanks. Then speak to Graham.
Yes, please, Edwin.
Yeah, it's I found it very interesting about the violence. There's a lot of programs like in the universities, and they might study violence, but sort of from an academic way, like, oh, we're going to study it and analyze the topic. So I think that's different what we're doing here.
And so you find this topic of pages very interesting, and you're aware that they study violence and conflict, or maybe conflict resolution, from many angles in the universities. But they do it from a very academic and structured point of view. And you're indicating that we approach resolution from a completely different angle.
Yeah, well, this is more a practice. How do you put this into practice? So we do conflict mediation. We've taken our empathy tent to where the political right has come here, for example, to Berkeley, and the political left, Antifa. They have, counter demonstrations. There's these big knockdown, drag out fights. We set up the empathy tent kind of in the middle of it, and we offer listening to both sides. And we try to bring the sides together to use this process that we're using here. It's the exact same process to talk to each other. And it's sort of the foundation. I see what we're doing here, sort of the foundation for conflict mediation.
And so you're highlighting a difference between the academic approach and what the Empathy Circle does. And this is a very, very practical approach. And it gets down to the real, you used your fingers like it's the real
nuts and bolts. Yeah.
I didn't actually use that word, but nuts and bolts. And this process is able to address the much bigger conflicts, like, for example, the left and the right in politics, and other extreme groups, like, for example, Antifa and various other organizations like the Proud Boys, for example. And you can bring them all together, and when you realize they're meeting, you put an empathy tent in the middle, and get these people to start talking. And
yeah, I just add, okay, it's also families. I mean, families. If you can get your families in empathy circles, it really helps in the families too.
Yes.
I mean, so it's very scalable. Everything from your friends and family to big conflicts, and this basic skill, I think, is sort of a core.
And so you quickly indicate that we're not really talking here in this empathy circle about the big drawn out fights, but rather that this is scalable. It's how do you understand your friend? How do you resolve a conflict with your friend? How do you resolve conflicts within a family? How do you begin to understand each other in a family? So it's very scalable, is the point that you're making.
And the academic work, to have sort of a map, to have all, it is, it's helpful. And I know the peace and conflict studies programs were started by Johan Galtung. I think he was one of the first in Norway. And I've done an interview with him, on empathy and conflict. And he has a quote. He says, "Peace is resolving conflict with empathy, nonviolence, and creativity, and it's a never-ending process." And I would say this is sort of the process, the essence of that process, what we're doing here.
And so you've talked about the academic world approaching things with really big concepts surrounding.
Map, I would say the map. of the
map. That was the word. Yes, thank you very much. And you contrasted this with a Norwegian who you've interviewed, whose name escapes me.
Johan Galtung.
Johan Galter. And the idea is that the empathy process creates peace. And when you create peace, you enable creativity to be or given space for creativity, and empathy creates creativity. And essentially what you're talking about is an endless reciprocal process. And it's completely different from what the academic approach is.
Yeah, well, I didn't want to demean academia, just and to say that it's creating a map, which is helpful, but it's good to actually do something, do the process too. So I think having both is helpful. And
so you wanted to stress as well that you're not demeaning the academic process. That has its value.
Yeah.
But the very practical approach of actually creating empathy and that leading to peace and creativity is a contrast, but a very valuable corresponding piece or matching piece.
Thanks. I feel very well heard. Thank you, Graham.
Thank you very much, Edwin. And so, Norshin, did I say that right?
Yes, you did.
Norshin, will you please be my listener?
Of course.
Thank you. So, as always, I'm quite moved by whatever is talked about in these empathy circles. So can you respond?
Yeah. I've also felt pretty moved by everything that has been said so far in this empathy circle. Can I ask how you have felt moved by what we've talked about?
Yes, indeed. And I'm trying to think about some of the things that the page prompted inside me. And Paige talked about being empathic. And I feel I am empathic, but there are all sorts of things that get in the way. And I've discovered that throughout the whole of my life, I have never listened to anybody. And I think it's about time I learned to listen and be there for others.
So you mentioned how you feel like you're an empathetic person, but you feel like there are also some shortcomings in your ability to empathize with others. And so you want to be able to listen to others better for personal growth and growth in your relationships. Can I ask what exactly you want to take from these circles?
May I just correct you for a bit, Norshin? As a listener, you're not allowed to ask questions, or at least it's desirable that you don't ask questions.
Okay.
And just reflect. And as a facilitator, I believe I heard a question in your last response, and but I was confused and I didn't really respond to it. So in that sense, I apologize. But anyway, if I may continue, Norshin, and thank you for responding. This subject of conflict resolution for me is also important, because when two people have needs and they express those needs, then somehow they need to be able to work out how they can actually satisfy those needs to mutual benefit.
So you want to be able to understand the idea of conflict resolution so that people can use their empathy to come to a mutual understanding when they have these problems with each other.
Yes, and it's the problems would arise because they've got needs and they need to have them resolved or satisfied somehow, and that engenders conflict, or at least may engender conflict. And so the process is very valuable to me. There are lots of things that are valuable, And this is one of the reasons why I come to the Empathy Circle, Ocean.
You believe that when people have these conflicts, it comes out of this need to satisfy their own wants and desires. And so you want to be able to come to this empathy circle to navigate through those conflicts so you could take from it and impart in your own life.
Yes, indeed. And very, very briefly, I would like to be able to work as a therapist. And to be able to work as a therapist, I need to be able to hear other people, hear their needs, and be able to help them reconcile their needs with the world around them.
You mentioned how in order to be a therapist, which is what you wanted to be able to do, you want to be able to empathize with others to help them.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Notion. And now, now you are the active speaker, and you can talk about anything you wish, or remember the topic is, why are you interested in the empathy circles? And so away you go.
Paige, would you like to be my active listener?
Yeah, sure.
Of course. So I'll answer why I'm interested in taking part in the empathy circle training. So I am a freshman in college in New York City, and as a freshman, I want to be able to get involved in the things around me right now. So one of the big things, as we all know, is the pandemic. And so that led me to want to volunteer with Pandemic Professors, which is a tutoring organization. I'm not sure if you're aware of it, but I work with a 10-year-old who has been affected greatly by the pandemic in terms of the virus, like physical sickness, and then economic instability. And so I want to be able to provide him with the best support, both emotionally and academically.
You mentioned that you're a freshman at university in New York, and you've joined this program, Pandemic Professors, where you're supporting a 10-year-old. So you want to be part of this training because you want to be able to support him well.
Exactly. So I want to be able to not only be there as like a teacher sort of person, but realize that part of the learning process is also being able to understand what someone needs and how to navigate around those emotional problems so that you could offer them the best academic support, because you can't really force these math terms and problems on someone when there's something else going on.
So you're saying part of your role is to be there as kind of academic support, but for that you feel that you want to be there in an emotional capacity to be able to support in that way, because they work together for the academic side to come through. Sometimes you need to work through these emotional needs.
Precisely. In order, you said it better than me, how they work together. And so beyond Pandemic Professors, though, I think the way I could apply this to my own studies and life is that I am right now a psychology major. And while my concentration is behavioral neuroscience, which is a more hard science type of study, my apologies, psychology in itself is a discipline that requires speaking to others in terms of like psychological research and having to connect with other people constantly. And so I want to be able to take these lessons from Empathy Circle and apply that to any research that I might partake in during my undergraduate career.
So you're majoring in psychology, and it's behavioral neuroscience, but you feel that at the same time a big part of psychology is to be able to engage with people. So you want to be able to take these skills into all of your undergraduate study.
Yeah, so for example, I want to be able to partake in some psychological research. This upcoming summer in order to just get more experience in the field and perhaps bolster my applications to medical school in the future. And just thinking of medical school, people oftentimes think that being a doctor is just being able to diagnose a patient, but when you diagnose a patient, you also need to understand that sicknesses and illnesses have a huge effect on someone's emotions and psyche. And in order to be able to be the best doctor you can be, you need to have that empathy. And I don't think a lot of people realize that.
So part of what you want to do is to go forth into medical school. So you feel that big part of that is to bring empathy into kind of the medical scientific realms at the same time when you're working with people.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I want to be able to not only be there for people's health, because I mean physical health at least, because health involves both physical and mental, and so I want to be able to do both.
So when you're going into people's houses or you're being with people, you want to be able to deal with both the physical and the mental, emotional side of health.
Thank you for listening so well, Paige.
So Paige, you are the speaker now.
Okay, cool. So I choose anyone to listen again, or
Anyone you choose, yeah.
okay. I'll choose Notion to be a listener. So I'm just taking in what you've just said. Yeah, about bringing together biological and the social sides of well-being. I think it's so true. In our society, the main model of well-being we're given is kind of medicalized and quite stripped. And I think the COVID pandemic has really brought up a lot of these issues and ways that different people approach well-being.
So you believe that in our societies, health is often medicalized, and in that sense, they focus more on the biological aspects rather than the emotional aspects of health. And so you also think that the COVID-19 pandemic has really brought out some of the issues with that system of health that we have.
Yeah. And a big part of that I've felt is it's brought up a lot of fear in all of us, which I think is always there. And it's interesting to see how people face this fear or how they react to it. I think some people turn more towards allowing themselves to be dominated and feeling that by giving away this power, they feel more safe in some sense. And I feel there's another way to instead hold on to our own power as people by feeling into ourselves.
So you mentioned how, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, the idea of fear has been brought up a lot. And so you mentioned how people respond differently to this fear, and you're worried about the people who respond to this fear by relinquishing their power that they have over themselves. And so you want to be able to find a way to remain empowered in the face of fear.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I feel a big part of this is being aware of our bodies and our emotions. And that's through love for ourselves and each other and connection. And I feel something that fear does is separate us from each other and from our bodies and our emotions.
So you think that fear harms our relationships with others and ourselves by taking away that sense of love that we have for each other's and ourselves. And you want to be able to, in a way, address the fear that we have by emphasizing love.
Yeah. And yeah, and having these mechanisms, whether it be yoga or empathy circle or nonviolent communication or whatever it is, that allow us to have these tools to be in touch with how we're feeling, and through that how others are feeling, so we can have this connection.
You find that being able to partake in things like yoga and the empathy circle will help us address these problems by helping us feel more connected to ourselves and just learning more about ourselves to be able to better face that fear.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. My personal experience, I think I had COVID back this time last year, so it wasn't really being diagnosed, but my mum was ill and then I got ill. And it was when I was just starting my yoga teacher training, and that really supported me at that time to think of this idea of disease as a dis-ease and instead trying to allow myself to come into some ease, accepting the illness.
First off, I apologize for any effect that getting the virus had on your health, both physical and mental. And you think that having yoga in that time of your life really helped you navigate through those physical and emotional problems, and you're thankful for that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. I guess I go as the speaker again,
You
right?
are now the speaker again, yes.
All right. I guess, Edwin, would you like to be my active listener?
Yes, listening.
All right, so I guess I'll take on a different aspect of why I wanted to be a part of the Empathy Circle training. So as a student in the 21st century, a huge problem among young adults and teenagers is mental health. In fact, I believe that a lot of research has shown that the anxiety and depression levels of youth today is the same as those of psychiatric patients back in the 1900s. I'm not sure which decade, but I feel like being able to partake in the empathy circle can, in a way, help me and my friends, or me help my friends navigate through these problems that have been becoming like increasingly worse.
Yeah, so another reason for you wanting to take the Empathy Circle training is that you see that there's a high level of anxiety and stress among young people, and you see the Empathy Circle as maybe one way of helping to address that with yourself and friends and others.
Exactly. So just in my first few months of college, through the friends that I've met, I realized how big of an issue mental health and self-esteem are. And I've been, while I have been on the other side of that issue by being the one who, I guess, drowned herself in these issues and not really doing anything to help herself, I realized that I want to be able to help my friends who are experiencing that right now by like letting them know that I am there and that I know in a way what they're going through, even though of course everyone's experience is different. And so I want to be able to take anything that I learned from these circles and just apply it to my personal relationships.
Yeah, so it sounds like you had sort of had some experiences with these issues of anxiety or stress. And so you've experienced that and you want to be able to contribute and support your friends and let them know that you've gone through it and that you would like to support them.
Yeah, so I've actually, I've tried to be more empathetic towards my friends. I mean, I'm not saying I wasn't empathetic before, but I guess being more consciously empathetic and making sure that the things I say reflect that I understand what they're going through and that I want to be able to be there to help them. And so I feel like while I am making improvements in that process of being there for my friends by being empathetic and showing that, there is still a lot more to be done. And I think just now, like through this empathy circle and learning that I should be responding by reflecting and not asking questions, that in itself just told me a lot about what I could be doing with these relationships. And so I'm already learning from this empathy circle a lot.
Yeah, so you want to be able to contribute to your friends and be supportive, and you feel that you are empathic already, and but you can always sort of grow and expand that. And you just had a learning, which was that oh, instead of asking questions, I can just sort of be there for them and listen. So already you've kind of feel you've learned something.
Exactly. So I feel like I've learned quite a bit already, and it has been, I think, less than an hour. So that is absolutely great. But I've also wondered whether if me just reflecting on what they're saying means that I don't have anything else to contribute, because it seems like while I am listening, I'm not helping by just reflecting and not offering more.
Yeah, so you have some concerns that maybe just reflecting that you're not doing all you could, that you maybe should be doing something else to really help, and you're kind of maybe questioning, is this enough? Should I be doing more?
Yeah, so I know time is up, but I just wanted to mention, like, I believe like empathy is a great thing, but I feel like either I could do more, or whether like the process could include more, but I'm not too sure.
Yes, you really want to explore. Is there more that you could do, or could the process somehow do more?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, great. Paige, can I speak to you?
Yeah.
Yeah, in terms of empathy, the process, what we're doing, the active listening, was started by Carl Rogers, who is like one of the 2 or 3 most influential clinical psychologists, kind of all time. So he actually sort of developed, articulated and explained sort of the dynamics of this empathic listening that we're doing.
So the form of empathic listening that we're doing here is based on Carl Rogers?
Rogers,
Rogers. He's a psychiatrist, is it?
Mm-hmm. Clinical psychologist means that they actually, he had 40 years of listening to people like we're doing, basically. Yeah.
So Carl Rogers, who's a clinical psychologist who had 40 years of experience of this kind of work.
Yeah, and he really articulated the benefits of it. It was like when you listen to people, there's a sense of they feel like heard and seen, and it gives validity to their experience. There's a sense of connection because somebody's listening to them, so you have a feeling of connection, and that sense of connection is very healing in itself, because it counteracts stress, with cortisol, right? Because when you get heard, you start feeling oxytocin. There's a lot of technical stuff, but your body is, the oxytocin is a very it's kind of a love hormone, they call it, right? You feel sort of a sense of warmth, and it counteracts stress. And stress is, very disruptive to the body, so it's harmful to the body. So when you have your body full of oxytocin, it's countering all that stress. That's a lot, but
the method of active listening is a form of validating what the person has said, which brings a sense of connection, and this is linked to the release of oxytocin in our bodies, which is part of how we feel connection.
Yeah, and the other part of it is that it gives space for the person to find their own solutions, because when you try to tell people what to do, they usually just throw out the suggestions. But if they can feel what the real problem is, it's like their own solution and their own creativity kicks in to really solve whatever the issues are. And a lot of times the issue is just, hey, I feel alone here with my problems, and you listening to me gives me a feeling of connection. So it's very healing.
So the active listening also gives people enough space so they can go through what they're feeling themselves and maybe come up with creative solutions to it, or even just feel a sense of healing from being heard.
Yeah, and so it has a lot of benefits. The other is sort of the fear that you were talking about. For what comes up for me about that is that there's responses to fear, fight, flight, freeze. You fight somebody when you're afraid, you freeze, you just kind of become incapacitated, or you kind of run away. And I think the fourth aspect of fear, the response that doesn't get talked about, is empathy, that you empathize with what the fear is. You sort of sense into the fear, maybe microdosing it so you can kind of ease into it. And then you sort of dissipate the fear by kind of going in and going through it. So yeah, I think that empathy is, very helpful in addressing fear.
So often we talk about 3 reactions to fear, which would be fight, flight, and freeze. But there's another form, which is going through the fear with empathy and moving through it in sort of little doses.
Yep, I feel fully heard. Thanks.
So you're the speaker now, Paige.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know where to take this right now. We've talked through so many aspects of this and how
Paige, you need to select a listener
and
ask.
okay. I'll select Graham to be my listener.
That's my pleasure. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Fight, flight, freeze. So yeah, I'm interested to learn more about this idea of microdosing the fear and going through it. Yeah, it resonates in one sense, and in another sense, I need more of a whole of it. And
so you started off by being kind of overwhelmed by the number of themes that were floating around here in our little circle. Sorry about my phone beeping, but and then you settled on the idea of empathy, empathizing, and microdosing empathy. So addressing fears and various other feelings that alienate people.
Yeah, it definitely resonates with me to go through what's coming up, whether it be fear, whether it be anger, to have these processes where we go through it rather than forget it or ignore it or distract.
And so you're excited by the idea, or challenged by the idea of being able to address these feelings rather than respond in the way in which we normally do, which is dismissing our fears. So we don't want to dismiss our own fears, and nor as a listener do we want to dismiss their fears.
Yeah. I think another reason of coming into to empathy circles and facilitation of it for me is just the hugely chaotic and tense political realms we seem to have been in recently, both in the States and around the world, and I didn't initially think of this as a left-right kind of political sphere, space for looking at political alliances or that kind of thing, but I also find that interesting.
And you're beginning to see applications for the processes of the empathy circle, and you're thinking about the world today with all of its kind of political stresses and turmoil, and you feel that while you hadn't originally thought of this and you used your fingers as part of a conflict process, that it may be so in your mind, and that the empathy process would actually be a valuable diffuser, if you like, of the stresses.
Yeah, both for going through any kind of personal conflicts that might come up, and it's always personal, but also ones that are linked to political issues and political topics that are kind of really on fire at the moment.
And so you're seeing that this is also scalable, that it can go from the personal level and to the very broad international political levels.
Yeah, and of course these things come together. So for example, in my family, I've been living with my parents, and my dad's very pro Brexit, and a lot of things came up in that debate about migration and all sorts. And at the same time, I was studying a lot to do with migration and supporting refugees. So this is a political issue that I felt created tension in our household. So it's both personal and political.
And so if I can just reflect, you find that in your family as well, there are lots of stresses which arise. One of them is that you live at home and your parents are, your father perhaps is a Brexit fan and he's against migration, and you're studying that at the same time in your master's work. And so you feel that the empathy processes could well be applied inside your family.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Paige. And Edwin, would you be my listener, please?
Yep, listening.
I had an interesting conversation with an ex of mine on Thursday, and this is actually our third meeting, and I proposed the meeting to her because I wanted to attempt to generate some understanding as to what led to the conflicts between her and I.
Okay, so you wanted to, well, you had a meeting with your ex, or you set that up, and the reason was to sort of try to understand each other about what led to your, maybe to your breakup or to your relationship.
Yes, and while I had several ideas, there was one really common theme, and that is that we somehow never listened to each other.
So a comment, while there might be different factors, one seems to be that you just didn't listen to each other.
Yeah, and we've spent the first 2 weeks anyway, talking about issues, but not actually addressing the idea that we didn't listen to each other. And what was happening was that we were taking polar opposite positions on virtually everything, which was the repeat of what held us apart in the first instance and made us separate.
So you were noticing that when you were talking with each other, you weren't really listening to each other, but just taking different polar opposite positions. And that was actually kind of the problem with the relationship in the first place.
Yes, indeed. And to introduce the empathy circle processes or empathic processes into established relationships. Even if this is an X, it's still an established, we know how to, or at least we communicate with a particular pattern. And to be able to change that pattern is actually very difficult.
Mm. Yeah, so you're just noticing that people relate with specific relationship, patterns, and to shift that to maybe do an empathy circle practice with the relationship is difficult. You're seeing the challenge of that to change the patterns.
And in the first meeting, I did actually try to reflect what was said. I didn't do it very successfully, but the problem for me was I found that or at least I was believing that this was the outcome, that I could reflect as long as I liked. The more I reflected, then it would be more a case of, well, see, all you have to do is listen to me, and then things will go well. And so I would end up in a situation where my needs are never heard.
Yeah, so you found that you could do the listening, and as long as you were just doing the listening, it was great. But it's like your needs weren't getting met because you weren't feeling heard.
Yeah, and so this is the thing that I'm finding is that it's very difficult to change existing procedures. I mean, here we don't know each other, so we come in without without earlier patterns. In fact, I'm finished.
Mm-hmm.
But when you know people, and that's what they expect, that includes your father, your mother, your siblings, all sorts of things, your friends. It's very difficult to change.
Yeah. So existing relationships, family relationships, there's a sort of a set pattern. It's really difficult to change it. Whereas when we don't know each other, we're coming together. So we're creating a new pattern to begin with. That's like easier.
Yes. Thank you very much, Edwin. I feel heard. Thank you.
Okay. Then speak to Nashin, if I may.
I'm ready.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking about Graham's, situation, and that's why the empathy circle has the structure that it has. It's to create that sense of mutuality. I hear all the time people say, I can listen, and everybody loves it if I just listen, but nobody listens to me. So that's sort of the rule as well. You get 5 minutes, I get heard then for 5. So it creates a sense of fairness. So I think it's important to up front have the agreement. Can we do this structure? And and you get agreement from all the parties.
You started off by saying how just reflecting on Graham's situation and the dynamic of the empathy circle, you find that the empathy circle in a way addresses a lot of those issues that are found in our relationships, because the way the empathy circle works is that we each get heard and we each get to speak. And so that allows us to address those problems. And so you like that dynamic about the circle.
Yeah, and even me, who's been working with empathy, and this kind of developed this relational process. For my family, it was like really hard too, because they're conservatives, the Trump supporters, and I was kind of on the other side, but I'm actually in the middle, not in the middle. I'm in the empathic side now. But anyway, it's like how to bring it into my own family was like a super challenge. It was like really hard.
So you found it a bit of a challenge to apply these skills of empathy to your own family, because you cited a political difference between your family and yourself, because while they are more leaning towards people like Trump, you find yourself on the more empathetic side of the spectrum.
Yeah, I was going to say, I used to be sort of on the left, but I grew up conservative, went to the, progressive, and now I'm kind of in the empathic. So I see the empathic as sort of a whole space by itself. So maybe just make that clear.
So you made this distinction between these two ends of the spectrum and the empathetic side of the politics, because you mentioned how while you grew up with these conservative values, you felt at times how you were more on the progressive side, but then as people change, as they always do, you found yourself also changing in your beliefs, and now you're in that empathetic circle.
Yeah. And what was the breakthrough in my family was my sister-in-law and my mother, they got into a conflict during Christmas. They were kind of yelling at each other. And I was able to do empathic listening, first listening to my sister-in-law, and, until she felt her doing exactly what we're doing right now. I just listened, reflected back then to my mother, reflected back, then went back to my sister-in-law, back and forth for like about 15 minutes. And that started calming things down. And then I asked them, oh, would you now listen to what the other person is saying and reflect back? So I got them into an empathy circle, and it kept, it started going and it was working. And then the family members who had been sort of hiding in the corners, they actually came into it, and it turned into this big family empathy circle. And it started like, I kind of kept it going, people weren't kind of doing it, but I'd kind of keep it going. And then it ended with the kind of the real issue coming out. The family member didn't feel like she was part of the family because of, financial issues. There was a sense, came up with a sense of acceptance, like we accept you, kind of hugs all around. And then I said, by the way, this is empathy. And they say, hey, this is pretty good. So we started doing kind of regular, periodic family empathy circles after that. So it's you need some kind of a break to shift those patterns that Graham is mentioning.
So you actually found a way to apply the empathy circle to your own personal life, because during Christmas you had this experience with your sister-in-law and mother where they were not listening to each other. And so you try to facilitate that empathy circle where you try to make sure that each of them were heard and listened to, and you reflected on their opinions of the issue. And so you were able to calm things down for not only them, but the entire family. And that enabled you to create an entire family-wide empathy circle. And basically all of you were able to contribute to it and realize what the issue at hand was.
Yeah, I feel fully heard. Thanks.
Oh, I guess I am the speaker now.
You are the speaker, yes.
Let's see. I feel like I've exhausted most of my points. Oh, let me choose an active listener at first. Graham, would you like to be my active listener?
Yes, I would like to be your listener.
So I guess I'll start off again with what I was saying. I feel like we've exhausted so many of our points, but just reflecting on what Edwin was saying about applying it to his own family, I realized that I could perhaps apply it to my own family, because while in the pandemic, of course, people are more on, they feel more tense, and they are more prone to, like, I guess, staying to themselves and not wanting to express their emotions. And I've seen that within my own family. So I'm just wondering how I could take what Edwin has done with his family and apply it to my own.
And so you started off by expressing that you felt that a lot of your the topics that you may have had uppermost in your mind have been exhausted. But following on from Edwin's idea, you're beginning to think that maybe you could apply these processes within your own family. And you're noticing that that generally, because of the COVID pandemic and whatever it's creating, people are getting a lot, are very tense, they're prone to isolate. And you think that in your family and in other families, this would be very useful.
Exactly. I think it would be, I mean, I've just seen an example of how it is very useful, because it helped solve, well, not really solve a problem, but figure out a problem. So I just like wonder, in which situations can I bring the empathy circle? Is it applicable in all situations, or are there certain topics where, I guess, subjects where it's more applicable than other topics?
And so you're almost saying that this is perhaps the first place to start is in your own family. And then you quickly followed that with the idea that what would the empathy circle processes be best applied to? And within families, there are lots and lots of issues arising. And so you're questioning how to actually introduce it into your family.
Right. You said it better than me. How do I introduce it within my own family? Because going back to the idea of patterns from before, I realized the lack of communication is a pattern within my family. So how do I find the courage to break that cycle? How do I find the courage to get my family to sit down in the living room and say, okay, I think we should talk about this thing, when in the first place, there wasn't such a thing of getting together and talking about subjects.
And so what we're discussing here has brought you to realizing that within your own family, there are all sorts of patterns of silence, and there's subjects that are just not addressed. And it then poses a challenge to you. How are you going to break into these patterns and introduce the empathic processes that we're experiencing here?
Yeah, exactly. How, I guess I'll say one last thing, but I feel like perhaps I mean, it's awful to wait until a situation comes up where there is a conflict to bring up empathy circles, but I think that is also one of the more effective times in a way to break the cycle, because there's a clear reason for bringing it up and it's not as random for bringing up empathy circle.
And so you were feeling a little bit guilty about your contemplation that it may be best to wait for a conflict to arise, a meaningful conflict, to have then an opportunity and justification for introducing the empathy circle. But that seems to be the most practical route for you at the moment.
Thank you. I feel very heard.
Thank you, Norshin. And so, Paige, will you please be my listener?
Yeah, I'm listening.
And so we've actually talked in three instances here of the difficulties of breaking into existing patterns with people. And my takeaway is, yes, this is difficult, but I have to start somewhere. And I have to start, if you like, now.
So we've talked about all three different instances now of breaking these patterns or patterns that come up in our communication. But the takeaway for Graham is that he has to start now.
Yes, and in some respects, I have actually begun that, but I'm thinking with that ex of mine who will come next Thursday and we will start talking. And I really need to do what Edwin suggested, and that is make an agreement at the beginning of the lesson, the beginning of our meeting, to set up the rules where you talk and I talk, you talk and I talk.
So you're going to talk again with your ex that you mentioned before on Thursday again, and you're feeling that key to your next talk is to set up what Edwin said, so some kind of principles, again outlining you talk, I talk, to promote that active listening.
Yes, indeed. And I'd like to go back to a theme that you raised, Paige, and that was about people relinquishing themselves. So in other words, doing everything that other people require rather than holding their own and declaring what they need and owning what they need and expressing what they need.
So you'd like to return to thinking about people focusing on what others need and instead to the idea of turning towards what do I need.
Yes, and one of the points of interest was that you raised this as a topic which you shared. One of the other threads that's here is about conflict resolution and violence and all that kind of stuff. And we're talking about political forces and inner family forces. And I come from a world where I was taught that my needs were unimportant.
So we've talked a bit about political forces, conflict, as well as family. And you come from a world where you learned that your needs were unimportant.
Yes, and so I'm just wondering how to actually express it. But as you begin to sort of say these things are important for me, and you begin to put a stake in the ground, then in a way you're going into a conflict world, even if it's a mild conflict, but you're nonetheless going into a conflict world. And to be able to negotiate that conflict and work your way through all the emotional things is quite challenging.
So as you begin to state your needs, you enter into a conflict world, and this can be challenging to navigate.
Yes, and my cell phone has gone on the blink, so that's my time. And I thank you very much indeed, Paige, for hearing me. So you're now the speaker.
Thank you. Who's gone the longest? I'll ask Edwin to listen.
Okay, listening. I just posted it. We're closing in 5 minutes.
Okay. I think I'll return to thinking about the family again. And it's interesting, with COVID, with us being, in with our families more, I really wanted to address our communication, and I tried to start up doing some sharing triangles with me and my parent.
Yeah, so being together with your family due to COVID, you create some sharing triangles to, sounds like, support communication.
Yeah, and the way I did it was just to say, okay, we each take a certain amount of time to speak, but we just went around. We didn't do reflections. It was just to each speak.
Yeah, so the approach was just everyone had sort of equal amount of time going around the circle to share.
Yeah, and I found it really, really helpful. It was just so nice to have a special space for that. I often feel I don't really want to talk about what I'm feeling or what's going on unless it's in a proper space, rather than just being thrown out in the kitchen or whatever it might be.
Yeah, so you want to share, your feelings. You want sort of a proper space for that, instead of it just being sort of, around the kitchen, just sharing something. You kind of maybe you want a safe space or conducive space.
Okay.
I think we still have 4 minutes. I think the time's off.
Yeah.
You're muted, Graham. You're muted, Graham.
I'm sorry, I hope you don't mind me interrupting you as the facilitator. I would very much like us to spend the last couple of minutes before we go is to actually harvest some of our experiences and say how we felt and what we valued in what was communicated here. Are you good with that?
Yeah.
Well,
sorry to cut you short, Paige, but
okay.
yeah. So
yeah, sorry to cut you short, Paige. Well, just to get the ball rolling, what I really enjoy about these circles is that as a listener, I can connect with all sorts of themes. I may not remember them, but I certainly connect with everything that is said.
I guess I could follow up with what you just said and say what I took from the Empathy Circle today. So I realized that it's kind of very interesting how, well, I'm going to assume, well, I know that I'm the youngest out of everyone in this group, but it was very interesting to see how I was able to connect with people of different backgrounds in terms of like age and just geographical backgrounds, because at the core of our relationships, there are these problems of communication and the lack of empathy. So I found that it was very interesting to be able to connect with a master's student in England, someone from California, someone from Ontario. And so I really appreciated that. And I hope to be able to use that in my own relationships, even if it's of less diverse backgrounds between the people in it.
And what about you, Paige? Thank you, Norshin.
Yeah, similarly, it's just I didn't expect to go into this topic. I didn't know really what topic it was going to be, and was slightly like anxious. Maybe it's going to be a big political thing or whatever. But I'm really glad to have explored this together and go into more feeling side of things.
And Edward.
yeah, it was that sort of the common humanity part is always a real treat. Is, you know, we have people from all over the world here, from the Americas, from Europe, from Africa, from Asia, you know, Australia. I mean, and everybody has sort of the same sort of issues, right? They got family issues, communication issues, you know, conflict issues, and you just see that, you know, at the core, you know, there's just this common humanity that we're all dealing with, and it's and I'm just always struck that the power of listening and hearing each other, you know, just the healing, learning, you know, constructive aspect of that. If we have a, you know, and have that space, you know, create that space. Yeah. So yeah, I'm always feel enriched by that.
Yes, and I think about your nuts and bolts. And Norshin talked about, I think she used the word negotiating around the feelings, particularly of the 10-year-old she's looking after, and reconciling that child's needs with the world around him is really some of the difficulties, the nuts and bolts that I sense as well. Anyway, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. And yeah, so everybody will be back in 30 seconds here. So we just have a little debrief, or full group debrief.
And so what city are you in? What town are you in, Paige?
I'm in St. Albans.
St. Albans, okay.
In Hertfordshire, yeah.
Yeah. St. Albans.
You know it?
Well, I know of it, yeah.
Mm.
There we go. There's everybody. Okay, holding out to the very last second, the last two groups. Welcome back, everyone. Hope you had as interesting and provocative and connecting discussion as our group. So what we want to do now is go around and take 30 seconds to share any learnings or insights from the Empathy Circle. I don't know if would one of our facilitators be willing to call on people? Want to take over that role just to share your final sort of a debrief?
I'll do that.
Okay, great.
going across my screen, I'll come to you last, Edwin. Going across my screen, Paige, would you like to briefly say what your takeaways from today's experience are?
Yeah, I've really enjoyed connecting with people from different places, and we were just sharing at the end this feeling of a common, although we're all sharing our unique experiences, our unique contexts or families, political situations, that there's something common in these emotions and wanting to share for a connection. So yeah, I really enjoyed practicing that today.
Thank you, Paige. So Norshin, can you speak, please?
Yes, of course. So I just wanted to add on to what Paige said, because I took something very similar from this experience, in that I realized that regardless of how unique and different our experiences are with our own families and relationships, we can all take something from what we learned today in the empathy circles. And so I'm looking forward to being able to do that with pandemic professors and my academics and own relationships.
Thank you, Norshin. So Diana, can you speak, please?
I had a good experience. I learned in that short time that I listen better when I'm not multitasking. So I appreciate everybody that was sharing in my circle. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. And Bill?
Yeah, I was really appreciative of everybody in the circle. We really started to talk about people's experience and how does the empathy or the practice of empathy in the circles, interface with that. Just really grateful, and gave me a lot to think about. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. And Adelina?
Hi. For me, it was really interesting to see how the discussion went to all kinds of places that I did not expect. And also how even if everybody came with their own story, at some point they all connected, and we were actually talking to each other even though the other was listening. So it was a really great experience for me.
Thank you, Adelina. And Jennifer, would you like to speak?
Grateful for this opportunity, for being in this empathy circle. It made me open up more and try to talk about how I feel about certain topics. And I like the fact that we get to connect to each other and understand each other's journeys, and get to meet new people. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. And Dominic, would you like to speak?
Yeah, the first thing is I was surprised how difficult it was to actively listen in a way that, like, when I'm with my friends, it's easier, but with new people, my thoughts were running and trying to keep up, and it kind of was distracting. But secondly, I was really grateful for this opportunity because since COVID is so isolating, it was nice to get really deep with 3 other people and kind of, I don't know, it was cathartic to talk about inner experiences. So thank you.
Thank you, Dominic. And Sita.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was a lovely group, and it was nice. I always enjoy how these circles they start to go deep, after not too long, and I always come away with friendly feelings towards people, and we were talking about a little bit how we all are coming from different backgrounds, but wind up sharing a lot of similarities just in the human experience. And it was just really lovely. So thank you.
Thank you, Sita. And Veronica?
I'll just put that on. Right. Yes, I found it was very illuminating for me, because as some of the others in my group were saying, we're kind of used to listening, and that feels comfortable. when you're actually having to do the talking, you needed that feeling of safety, and the way in which the process is held indeed brought that on much quicker than I could have envisaged. And the conversation does go deeper, and the feelings deeper, and the connection deeper, and therefore the experience of being a human is totally enriched this evening. So thank you to everybody, and especially to my wonderful, rich, wonderful group. Thank you.
Thank you, Veronica. And Lydia?
Yeah, I agree with what everyone is saying. It's just very interesting how everyone coming into the circle had, different backgrounds and lived different lives, but in the end, we're all just people, and we're all kind of experiencing the same things, and coming together and connecting with these experiences is really reassuring that, we're just, this is life, and connecting,
Thank you, Lydia. And Maria?
Sort of what everyone else was saying. I think initially, I think Dominic kind of mentioned that I caught myself really trying hard to remember everything. Like I need to make sure I'm listening and I could, recap everything without missing a piece, and focusing on that distracted me from really hearing and connecting to what the person was saying. But as we listened and connected, it became easier and easier. It naturally became a drive to want to understand the person more and to be more empathetic and to connect with them. And I appreciate that we kind of talked in our session that how had we met on the street, we probably would have never gotten to the conversations or have built the interest to listen to the other person. But in this situation, we got to really hear each other. And in fact, we were one of the last groups because it was like, well, wait, I want to hear more. So I'm grateful for this experience.
Thank you, Maria. Rachel?
Hi, everyone. So this is my second time. Yeah, like other people were saying, both times there were times where it was hard for me to, especially at the beginning, to focus. I think because I was nervous, but like other people were saying, I think very quickly started to feel more comfortable. I think the people in my group, they're all sweethearts and really open, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate them. So yeah.
Thank you, Rachel. And Kat?
Yeah, I was also in Veronica and Rachel's group with Michelle and Aoi as well. And it was really nice. Everyone was from completely different places and they're all doing different things. And it was really interesting to hear about each person's, each interesting that they're doing, but then also connecting the way we were. And it also went really deep and it was really nice. And it was just really good because it had so much range and depth as well. So it was really nice. And I really appreciate them. And they were really skilled really quickly as well, which is always just even better. Really good. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Kat. And Hui?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. So on the session just now, it is the first time that I have the experience in the Empathy Circle, and through this experience, I know how like a good communication way that we can have a space that everyone can share their opinions freely, and also feel connected and feel be heard. And also we talk about our some of our dreams or jobs or like what we want to do with this empathy circle. And yeah, I feel like there is something inspirational that we share a very similar vision of we want to get more connected and united and to really practice this in our daily lives. Yeah, so thank you all.
Thank you, Howie. And now to Michelle from Ireland.
Yeah, it was just such a magical circle. So yeah, I was part of that same one with Kat and Veronica and with Rachel and Howie. And yeah, like we had one person, like each person like doing something to make a really positive impact in the world. Like one like doing climate action, another like as a social worker, another volunteering with young people with trauma, and then like, you know, Kat facilitating with like empathy. And it would move me almost to tears. Like I was just so inspired to bring like for these people to gather in this like shared space. And somebody remarked like that we were like 3 times around the circle, and we had felt like the group had already like kind of come together as one, you know. And it was just, yeah, it was like that really human experience, I think, that was mentioned there. It's just gorgeous. Thanks, Graham.
Thank you, Michelle. And so for me, before I pass it over to Edwin, one of the really common themes was what Edwin's called a kind of a common situation that we all find ourselves in, where we live in families and with connections and friendships that are all effectively not communicating, certainly in our families. And to be able to break through that is quite a challenge, but it seems that we all face the same kind of problems. And I think about what Dominic said, where you can get distracted by there being so many and such deep topics arising. And for me, I add to that I develop a little bit of anxiety, and somebody else mentioned that. And but anyway, it's an amazing experience, and I really enjoy being able to come together and share things with people. And so, Edwin, would you like to add your bit?
Yeah, thanks, Graham. Yeah, I really appreciate seeing the common humanity. We have people from all over the world, you know, come to these empathy circles, and you just see you really get down to the depths of, you know, who we are as human beings. And we see that common humanity. You know, we're all dealing with family issues, societal issues, personal, you know, feelings. And I think the empathy circle, I always experience it, kind of helps us just to see that. And it always feels very constructive. So thanks everyone for taking part. And I'm going to put in sort of for next steps. This is every Friday. You can, you know, come as often as you wish to these introductory empathy cafes. And there'll be one next Thursday at 8 p.m. Pacific. There'll be one more for the Australia, Asia time zone. And then we're starting cohort 11 with that group. That's going to be starting 8 p.m. Pacific. And there's a link to it there. So you're welcome to join us if that's not too late for you. And then for you with pandemic professors, this is like really hot off the press. We just starting to set this up, and that's going to be cohort 12. So if you're able to take part, you're welcome to take part on Saturdays. It's going to be at 10 a.m. Pacific, you know, going for 5 weeks. So you can click through there and kind of be one of the first to sign up for that cohort. I'll put some more links in here. So I just put it in a link to a feed. Let me get that, make sure that's working. So if you click on that link to the feedback form, it's the feedback to this it's a feedback on the introduction to the Empathy Circle Facilitator Training. And if you just click on that, if everyone would just click, everybody click there, anybody. It might be a little hard for cell phones. You might have to do it another time. So you click on that, so you can scroll down, type your email address in there, and then kind of fill that out, so that will get us, you can get on our announcement list so we can keep you up to date. And also it kind of helps us evaluate this introduction and kind of get your feedback for improving it. And the last thing is if you'd like to share one feeling that you have right now in the chat. So I'm feeling very connected, and I see happy, and just write that feeling into the chat. And finally, to say goodbye, we just have our jazz hands. So we'll just say goodbye with that, and look forward to seeing you in the training and the next Empathy Circle. So until next week or whenever, bye for now. And if the facilitators would stay for kind of a debrief after, appreciate that. So long, everyone.
Edwin, I have a quick question.
Sure,
all right?
Go for it.
If I want to do the training, but this is only my first circle, could I sign up